Hi, this is Hank reporting from Kyiv, and this is my update on Russian-Ukrainian war. Let's see what happened around Ukraine in the last 24 hours. Fresh nuclear threats. $425 million military aid from US. 49 Abrams tanks from Australia. Netherlands gives green light for F-16s. German ultimatum for Putin. $300 million loan from Canada. Special Forces commander eliminated. Russian fanatics attacked Ukrainian church. Drone attack and Russian losses in Ukraine. Russian troops are planning to attack Ukrainian nuclear power plants. As we say here, our song is good and new. In fact, we have not heard anything new since the beginning of the war. The Russians have taken special control of our country's nuclear power industry. At the moment, the largest nuclear power plant in Europe, Zaporizhzhia NPP, is under the control of terrorists who have mined it and storing weapons there in defiance of all possible rules. Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha announced this threat at a meeting of the Nordic-Baltic Aid Minister. Quote, Russia has air superiority. We know that they are preparing strikes on our nuclear power facilities. It was in the news from the beginning of the invasion, just no one cares. Rafael Grossi went on an inspection tour, saw no violations in the armed men occupying the damn nuclear power station, then went to hug Russians in Kursk, and that's it. World, I beg you, let's do everything so that our descendants don't have a story to film another series about a nuclear disaster in Ukraine. I remind you that in 1986, the idiots in the government of the Soviet Union allowed and then covered up the nuclear disaster in Chernobyl, and the consequences were horrific. What solution does Minister Sybiha propose to solve the problem? He appeals to our partners to give permission to use long-range weapons against Russian military airfields as part of our right to self-defense, according to the UN statute. We're simply banging our heads against a wall of misunderstanding. I really don't want a radioactive cloud to cover our entire country and Europe, and we would write, "We told you." In general, it seems to me that many people still do not understand the seriousness of threat. Putin has already attacked us, has already destroyed dozens of cities, has already killed hundreds of thousands of people, but there are those who think that, wow, no, Putin can't be that reckless. This picture shows all of our nuclear facilities. The purple ones are not completed, so we'll remove them right away. The yellow one shows the Chernobyl station in the north, which is closed. We will remove it too. The green one on the right shows the Zaporizhzhia NPP that I mentioned, and which they already attacked with a drone, then set fire to car tires and a cooling tower to simulate an accident. Now, it's their target number one. The remaining three green ones on the left are our active nuclear power stations, which essentially support the entire energy system of the country. Without them, a total blackout is really possible, and the future prospects look extremely bad. What are we going to do with this, humanity? The US allocated a package of military aid from the Pentagon warehouses under the PDE program, which is estimated at approximately $425 million. This doesn't mean that Biden is paying $425 million to Ukraine or giving them in suitcases to Zelensky, but it means that the old equipment is estimated at approximately $425 million after the markdown by the US Department of Defense, and will be transferred to Ukraine, and the states will then produce new equipment to update their stock. Roughly speaking, they are disposing old Humvees and other equipment and will help us defend the country. The list contains approximately 13 items. As far as I understand, these are all old nomenclatures. We will not see anything new, but it means that we have already at least know how to use all this effectively if it runs out. There are mainly air defense missiles and shells of various calibers. The list is quite serious. From the interesting thing, I see that the package adds 2,000 Humvees and 10,000 granite launchers to the statistics of all transferred aid. I looked at auctions in America, and yeah, old Humvees can be bought quite cheap, and there are a lot of them. So it's a good option for both parties, and to write off the old stuff from the balance sheet and for us to get the necessary tools. In addition, it was said that the US will supply another Patriot system to protect us against Russian missiles. This is certainly a very powerful addition. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for freedom. Australia has announced that it will supply Ukraine with 49 Abrams tanks, which they plan to replace with a newer model soon. This will be done as a part of the military aid package valued at approximately $245 million. Minister of Defense Pat Conroy said, quote, "We stand shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine in their fight against Russia's illegal invasion. These tanks will deliver more firepower and mobility to the Ukrainian armed forces and complement the support provided by our partners for Ukraine's armored brigades. Australia has been steadfast in our support for Ukraine. As we face a challenging geostrategic environment, it's important that we continue to work together with our partners around the world to deter aggression and coercion and protect the global rules-based order. Of course, I'm glad to hear this. The Abrams are powerful weapons and they will help us a lot. What's interesting is that these tanks have never been in combat. Roughly speaking, they spent their entire lives on the training grounds of distant Australia. I want to say that I'm certainly glad that the Australian tanks have never had to fight in all these years, and that would not have ever been the case if dictator hadn't started a war. We sometimes joke about how good it is to be Australian. You don't have any land borders with anyone, and you don't have to dig trenches to defend your country. Thank you, Australia. The Netherlands has always been among those countries that have confidently supported us for all the 10 years of this war. I remind you that in 2014 the MH17 tragedy occurred. Then pro-Russian separatists in Ukraine shot down a civilian Boeing of Dutch Airlines from a Russian Buk anti-aircraft missile system over the Donetsk region. 298 innocent people from different countries died, and Russia has always denied its involvement. Since then, the Netherlands have always been among those countries that very clearly and boldly help Ukraine. It is they, together with Denmark, who supply us with the first F-16s. I'll quote Defense Minister Ruben Brekelmans. We have delivered our first batch of F-16s. They are now in Ukrainian airspace. And we have always said that Ukraine must adhere to international law, and international law does not contain any distance restrictions. International law does not stop at the border of or 100 kilometers from the border. So we allow Ukraine to use F-16s for self-defense. This may be needed to intercept missiles or to strike, for example, at Russian airfields, so military targets, and this is also allowed to be done on Russian territory or in Russian airspace. I was especially impressed by the line, "International law does not contain distance restrictions." And this is exactly what's important. Here is a gun for you, but do not shoot too far. It doesn't work like that. Putin doesn't limit himself with anything, neither laws nor moral frameworks, only the amount of ammunition. All of us who are still alive in Ukraine are alive only by a lucky chance because we simply haven't been hit yet. That's the only reason I can record this video on camera now. Here's a good picture, describes the whole situation. I have no idea how long this will last, and I understand that everyone is tired of this war, but we don't have options. And the fact that you can choose and you are choosing to support Ukraine in the fight is wonderful. I hope you never have to be in a similar situation. So I'm very grateful to the Netherlands. In general, I'm very grateful to everyone. This will be a video of gratitude. Friedrich Merz, the head of the German opposition and probably the leading candidate for the post of Chancellor of Germany, addressed the current Chancellor Olaf Scholz with a very powerful speech. This news is quite difficult to explain because my German is not that good anymore and I cannot translate Mr. Merz's speech word for word, so I will tell you what I understood from the several translations of his speech, which probably everyone I know in Germany has already sent me. Also, under this video there will be a link to the English translation from the publication Ukrainska Pravda if you want to read the details. The main idea of Mr. Merz sounds like this: let's give Putin an ultimatum. He must stop the attack on civilian infrastructure of Ukraine and the bombing of peaceful cities. If this doesn't happen in 24 hours, then we will supply Ukraine with Taurus missiles and remove all possible restrictions on their use. Oh, I understand that this is part of the election strategy, but I really like this mood. We have a call for a bold Western leader to stand up to Russians. If you know any current leaders who have said something similar, please write. I may have missed it. This is important. Here's a translation of the quote that intrigued me. Mr. Chancellor, the time has come for us to overcome our fear of Putin in order to truly put an end to the atrocities in Ukraine. If we do not do this now, then in a few years we will again reproach ourselves for having misjudged the situation. We misjudged it in 2014, and we cannot misjudge it again in 2024. Because if this happens again, we will collectively remain unreliable in the face of history. Let these words be heard. I understand that politicians talk a lot and not everything comes to life, but let this rhetoric have weight. Vielen Dank, Herr Merz. Canada has provided Ukraine with a financial aid package worth almost $300 million. The funds are provided on concessional terms. 10-year term, interest rate 1.5% per annum. The grace period is 4.5 years from the date of receipt of funds. And that's interesting. I found this information on the website of the Ministry of Finance, and all the news simply writes, Canada gave money to Ukraine, but no one says under what conditions, and it looks just like a suitcase of money that was simply sent by mail. I'll correct it. Canada gave Ukraine $300 million as a loan on a good terms at 1.5% per annum. That would be correct. Since February 2022, Canada has been Ukraine's fifth largest provider of budget support. Thanks to these funds, we have been able to maintain financial stability and meet essential state budget priorities. I am deeply grateful to the Government of Canada for its unwavering support, said Minister of Finance of Ukraine Serhiy Marchenko. Thank you, Canada. The picture for this news is not informative, but I can show you the rest according to YouTube rules, so I'll tell you what happened. If you want, you can find a video and more photos for this news on the internet. Here you see the car of the deputy commander of the Center for Training Special Operations Forces of the Russian army named Nikita Klenkov, who was liquidated in the Moscow region after he returned from the war in Ukraine. This is a very big target. Special Operations Forces, or as we call them SSO, are the elite of both the Russian and Ukrainian armies. There are a few such people that go through fantastically difficult selection process and have the best equipment, such as panoramic night vision devices for $60,000 and so on. We will not see quick results from this operation, but the fact that the person in charge of training such a structure was liquidated is a very important event in narrow circles of professionals. And this is a good signal to all Putin specialists that they can never relax even at home. I have 3 videos I want to show. Background. This year, Ukraine finally passed a law banning the Russian Church on its territory. And all Orthodox churches of the Russian Church, which is called here Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, must be transferred to the management of Ukrainian Orthodox Church. Roughly speaking, now parishioners will not serve Russian FSB agents in cassocks and give donations to Moscow and are obliged to transfer to the Orthodox Church, which fully complies with Ukrainian laws. That's it. In the video, you see how people who do not want to break ties with the Russian church attack a local church in Ukrainian city of Cherkasy and those Ukrainian soldiers and security with pepper spray. They are very loud, keep that in mind. I've been following the developments of the situation all day. To me it looks wild, especially during a war. Let's watch the next video. I'm very annoyed by this howling woman, but even more annoyed by the guy screaming in Russian at the end, "We are with you, Russia." You also see how they attack soldiers and guards with yellow armbands. Tell me, what do you think should have been done with these people? They attacked our soldiers during the war, and thank God with no weapons. Next video. These are fanatic lovers of the Russian church who got inside the temple and barricaded themselves. I don't understand why this is possible. They are literally traitors, they openly demonstrate this. As a result of this incident, the police drew up protocols for an administrative violation and this whole crowd went home with very sad faces. The problem is that, apart from administrative violation, I believe they cannot be charged with anything under Ukrainian law. We cannot prosecute them for their faith or views. Just imagine what a cry this offended and oppressed will raise to the world, and Russia will advertise it as oppression of Russians in Ukraine. Damn it, we're hostages of this game by the rules. You see the enemy, you know the enemy by sight, but you can't do anything with them. It's horrible. Maybe you know the solution. Last night, the Russians launched 56 drones at us. The defense forces shot down 22 drones and another 27 were crashed by electronic warfare. I don't know why they don't add them to one list. We have 49 destroyed targets. It says that 5 drones hit infrastructure facilities, 1 damaged a residential building in Kyiv. 1 launched X-59 missile didn't hit anything. Typical Wednesday night in Ukraine. Over the past 24 hours, we have crossed the line of 9,000 destroyed Russian tanks and 18,000 destroyed armored vehicles. Just imagine these numbers. If you have ever stood near a tank, multiply by 9,000. It's unbelievable. Imagine how many years the Russians will have to clean up their trash from our fields after the war. At the same time, Kazakhstan President Tokayev said the phrase, quote, "Russia is invincible militarily and further escalation will lead to irreparable consequences." Someone hasn't been following the events of the last few years very closely, yeah? And I doubt he can explain what kind of escalation he can imagine. Stop sucking up to Putin, Tokayev. His rusty tanks and guns and ships are burning just fine. That's the news I have for you for today. There are a few more interesting things. The reform of Ukrainian customs, the talk about possible nuclear weapons production in Ukraine, casual things, and some information about drones that will be in another video. If you want to support this channel, all the links to PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee are under the video. Thanks to everyone who supports me. Take care and I hope to see you tomorrow.